Hey y'all, this is Julie, and we are here today to do the free sew-along. It's the half hexi sew-along, and we are going to be making Tiddlywinks, which is a free Moda pattern. We have downloaded this pattern in our files section. So if you go to our files section, you can find that pattern to print it out. You are going to want to have the pattern in front of you because I'm not really going to go over all the exact cutting measurements and stuff, so that pattern is available to you. One of the products that we suggest you have is Moda's Project Jelly Roll template. These are $5.99. They're available on our website as well as our app, and you can get these and put it in your next order if you don't already have one. It makes cutting these strips a whole lot easier. So the pattern, if you don't want to buy the template, however, has a paper template on the back page that you can cut out and use as a paper template. It's just a lot harder using a paper template than it is an acrylic template. So I encourage you to get the acrylic one because this is a lot of cutting these little pieces in here. What I am making my project out of is the Songbook Jelly Roll. So I have almost all of my strips cut. I'm going to cut a couple more to show you guys how to cut. And then I'm also using a Moda Bella Solid called Nectar. So the reason why I chose a solid for my background, so as you see, it's going to be the edges around your little hexis. It's going to be everywhere that it shows white on that pattern. The reason I chose a solid is because when you're cutting these out, these different little angles that you're going to be using as your setting triangles, you don't have to worry about what's right side and wrong side because a solid is the same on both sides. So you can cut them all the same way and just flip them to whichever direction you need them to go. You don't have to worry about them being cut in the wrong angle. Now, speaking of angles, when you cut your jelly roll strip, when you leave that strip folded like it comes off the jelly roll and you cut your piece out, you will have this little hexi, right? But when you open it up, you've got it to where it's going to be together. So it's as long as you're not using a directional fabric, you could even, cut them all. But I just left mine folded. You have your pair that goes together. You kind of need to keep these organized. The way I've done it is, and I haven't cut all my strips, so these aren't my whole jelly roll. You're going to cut your whole jelly roll up like this, and you're going to need eight half hexis out of each strip. So if you cut it or still folded and you cut it 4 times, you're going to have 8, right? It's just math. I cut mine 2 at a time. If you don't feel confident enough to cut them 2 at a time, you can cut them 1 at a time. It's no big deal. But I did cut mine 2 at a time. Let's see. What else about cutting? Cutting your jelly roll, make sure I didn't trim my selvages off first, but I made sure that when I laid my template on, I was past my selvage. So you don't want that ugly selvage in one of them. You will have a good little piece left over at the end. I'm not sure if it's quite big enough for another. It is. So if you do have to straighten up, you get crooked or you mess up one, you do have enough on the end to get another half hexi set out of the ends of your strips. I start with my selvage end because that fold end then gives you, a good little strip here. Even if it was just left for scraps, you could do something else with that. So it does give you a little bit of a it's better to leave that at the end, the fold at the end. Okay, so has any questions come up, Krista, before I get too deep into how this is done? Can everybody see us okay on the video and hear us okay? Somebody comment before we get started, because that's always somebody has a problem seeing or hearing us. So just before we get started. I have broken this down to where it's comfortable for me, because when I first looked at this, I don't want to lay this whole quilt out on a design wall, right? I don't want to lay all these tiny little pieces out on a design wall. I am going to do this a section at a time. So I put this piece together already. So that's 3 rows of a full hexi. So that's basically 6 rows of half hexi. I know that this is going to be my next one, right? So I'm going to lay it down and kind of see and lay out the next section. Do it a section at a time, because if you try to do too much, you know, at once, it's just a lot of little pieces. That's just my personal way I organize to do it, but it's totally up to you how you do it. But I'm going to show you my theory on it, okay? Now, here's another thing about this pattern. You don't have to make a quilt. How cute would this be if you just put a little border around that and made a little pillow out of it? You know, you can do a ton of things with these little half hexis. They don't have to be a full quilt. You can also maybe, instead of making your rows just 3 hexis across, maybe do another hexi on that side and make your placemats. So you can adjust it to be what you want it to be. You can make your rows longer and do a table runner. You could do a ton of things. So you could do this size and do a table runner. I mean, this is a good, you know, for a little table runner. Maybe you do 4 across and add your border and have a cute little table runner. So lots of things you can do with this pattern. Just use your imagination. You don't have to, if doing all of these hexis intimidate you, you don't have to do a full quilt. You can just, like I said, do a table runner, a bed runner, placemats. You can do little things, a pillow. Okay, so before we get started, me showing you how to cut, I will tell you that first of all, from my background fabric, which is this little nectar color, I cut 2.5-inch strips. The pattern tells us to cut 13 of them. We're going to set 4 of those aside. These are going to be our top and bottom border. So you just set those aside. You don't want to accidentally cut them up. And then you have some 4.5-inch strips that you're going to have for a, these are the strips that go between your hexi rows. And then you have an 8.5-inch with the fabric strips that are going to be for your outer border. So those, cut those, set them aside. The 9 strips that you were going to cut for your little setting triangles, we're going to cut those, subcut those into 2.5 by 3.5-inch rectangles. So I talked to you about why I chose a solid. It's just going to make life easier, okay? So if you didn't choose a solid for your background, that's fine, but you do have to pay attention to this next step, and I'm going to tell you how you're going to cut your little setting triangles. So each row, as you see, is going to have a little setting triangle on the ends. So we have to get that angle cut in there. I'm going to take... what did I do with them? And I cut mine several at a time. I don't know how many. 3 or 4. 4 is good. And you don't have to be precise with this, because this is trimmed up. I trimmed a good 1/2 inch off of each side of this while ago. So you're gonna trim this off. But the first thing you want to do is kind of eyeball the center, and I'm using my template, and I'm kind of, there is like a plus sign before it says Fabrics Plus Supplies under the word Moda. I'm just kind of using that plus symbol as my center. I'm lining it up. Can they see this? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to cut that angle. Now, if you are using a white on white or something like that, you're going to have to, where's the pattern, and I'll show you, it tells you. You're going to have to cut both directions. Show them right there where it shows flipping it both directions. So I'm going to cut one that direction so you can see. So now if I'm going to cut my other angle, I'm going to line it up like this. And I'm going to cut it so that I have my angle going both ways, because you need both orientations. But the cool thing about solids is you don't have to worry about any of that. You can take all of these solids right here and you can flip them over and use either side. So I do want to clip my dog ears, so now I'll take my ruler and just line it back up just to snip those dog ears off. And like I said, it doesn't matter, some of these are bigger than the others, because you just want them approximately in half. You're going to end up trimming this off quite a bit, and you'll see that when I get these put together. So you are going to make 96 of these. Yes, you're going to cut 96 rectangles. So you're going to end up having double that. Anyway, okay, so that is your setting triangle. So I'm going to set those aside, and we're going to talk about cutting our strips. Your strips have a selvage on them, so pay attention to where that selvage is at. I'm going to turn mine over so you can see it. I am lining up 2 strips right directly on top of each other, and I'm going to cut 2 at a time. Now, if you don't feel brave enough to cut 2 at a time, just cut 1 at a time. It's no big deal. But you're going to line up the bottom and the top of your template with the sides of your strips. Again, remember, you're going to have leftover down here, so don't stress out to think you got to get every little inch down here on this end. Start with your selvage in. Make sure you are clearing that selvage, and you're not going to have any of that in your piece. And then you're going to trim it. Snip your little dog ear. It's harder for me doing it sitting down, so I shouldn't be struggling this much. But it's easier to do it standing up. Okay, so I have 1 set. Now I'm going to take my template and flip it around. Move my fabric over. And on this little bitty cutting board, I'm going to flip my template around. Now I'm going to trim the dog ear there, trim the dog ear on this side. There's the second set. Third set, and we're going to cut 4 sets out of here because it says we need 8, at least 8 out of each strip. So we may have some left over in the end. I'm not sure yet, but if you do, guess what you can do? Make a pillow. Make a pillow to match your quilt. Okay, so I have 4 sets now. So I can set my little scrap piece off to the side, get rid of my scrap, my trash. These little bitty dog ears will be everywhere over here. And next, what I did was I'm going to move my cutting mat because I don't need it anymore. I kind of laid mine out in piles so that I could see what I was dealing with, right? So I've got and you can probably have a bigger area to work on than what I'm trying to work in so that you guys can see. Okay, so I've sorted out my pieces. Now I'm just going to start laying them out. And you just follow the diagram here. You're going to always have a half in the middle, right? You're going to have a half up here. When I go to do this next block, so this is the one I'm working on, I want to make sure, it doesn't matter what I go here, but I have to make sure that that center piece is going to be the same thing that was in the previous section I was working on, okay? Or the previous row. So if you're going to do it a row at a time, that's fine, or 2 rows at a time. I chose to do 6 rows at a time. And then that way it's easy for me to, it fits on my wool mat. It's easy for me to navigate around as I'm chain piecing. That's another thing I'm going to do is chain piece while I'm doing this. Okay, so that's how you lay it out. This is very scrappy, so don't overthink the layout. Just try to distribute your colors good. Don't overthink. If you have all your strips cut up, you can even, lay them out in a way that you don't have a bunch of navies right together, sort them, and then just start here and just start working down the row and just go down the rows until you have, get to the end and then start over. So it's super simple to, in my mind, to do it that way, to think about it that way. So I'm going to leave that right there. And I am going to, let's see, I've got my little corner pieces here. I've got my, I'll move this right here. So I have mine laid out. This is the next section I'm going to work on. So I'm going to go ahead and lay my, my little setting triangle or setting edges, half hexis. Now you've got to make it go right. So again, with your solids, you just flip them over if it's not the right direction. Your other fabric, you're going to have to make sure you're using the right angle. And we are not going to be lining up because none of these are the same size, right? These may be different sizes based on how you cut them apart. So we're not going to worry about that. I will show you what you're lining up. Okay, so I have them all laid out. This is what I'm ready to start sewing. I am going to chain. And to chain this together, I tried to figure out a way to do my famous continuous chaining that I love to do, but I just couldn't make it work. So, but I am going to chain these 2 pieces, these 2 pieces, these 2 pieces, these 2, and these 2. Then I'm going to cut my thread, cut them apart. I'm going to go back and I'm going to add the next piece to each one of them. So ultimately, I'm doing 6 rows at a time, okay? One thing I will tell you, I use what we call a leader all the time, especially when I'm chain piecing or when I'm piecing doing anything, because if you start sewing right on the edge of your block, it never fails. It's either going to suck it down into the bottom of your needle plate, or it's going to leave you nasty tails that get tied up in a knot on the back, and it just looks ugly. So to keep from having anything like that happen, I start with a little leader. And all that is just a little scrap, and then I just sew right off the edge of it and stop. Now I have my machine set on hover. Anytime I am doing a chaining project, I'm going to have my machine on hover. So that is what we are doing. And I will show you, I'm going to have Krista show you, the way the dog ears are cut off, it lets you line up that fabric so you don't have any points sticking over. So flip it now to the back and let them see the back. So your edges are lined up. You don't have any little points sticking out, right? It doesn't really matter which way you sew, like this up or this up. It doesn't matter. I flip-flop them depending on which way I want them to go on my machine because they're at an angle, so it's not like sewing squares together. So I want it to be kind of angled that way, so I'm going to turn mine over. The pattern says use a scant 1/4 of an inch. Regardless whether, just be consistent throughout your project. So I've started with a scant 1/4 of an inch. I have to stay that way through the whole project or my rows aren't going to come out the same, right? So we're going to stick with that scant 1/4 of an inch, but just check your seams to make sure you're consistent. Okay, I've done that one. I'm going to stop and I'm going to get the next one. I'm lining up my edges. Any questions, Krissa?
No, ma'am.
Is anybody watching us?
We do. We have quite a few people on.
Awesome. Okay, guys. So this is a very repetitive project. So I'm not going to sew the whole thing with you. I'm just going to get you started on this by doing this first section. So notice that I'm kind of flipping these each time because I want that angle to go that way and not. So I'll show you. If I laid it this way, then now the fabric's going to be pointing towards me and it's going to be hard to chain the next piece. Now that after we get the last one done, then I'm going to cut my thread and we're going to press. So now that when I go to cut them apart, I'm just going to kind of lay them right back in the position that they went in, okay? Just to keep track of where they're, where they go. Okay, so the pattern will show you which way to press. The arrows that are printed on there, they show you which way you want those seams to go. So we're going to press the first one out. Yes, the first one's going to be pressed out. The next one, I need to turn my iron down. I'll let it get so hot. The next one is going to press in. Of course, if you didn't, I probably wouldn't have all these other pieces on my pressing mat while I was trying to do this. Okay. Now we're ready to go again. So we have all of those together. Now we're just going to go up here to the next one. We're going to grab it, and we're going to start chaining this next step. Again, it's very easy with those little dog ears cut off to line up your seams to be exactly straight, so when you press that angle, you know, sometimes when you're sewing on an angle, it doesn't come out to be a straight piece afterwards because you didn't overlap it enough. But it's a pretty fast process if you're organized. I just get my leader ready to go. Okay, I'll start with my top one. Whoops. And it's easy to put them back in order if you get them out of order because they're going to match up, right? Okay, so now our pressing tells us which way to press. The reason this is very important to press the direction it tells you to is because you're fixing to be nesting these seams, and you will want these pressed in the right direction to make nesting a whole lot easier. And I'm just trying to do this where y'all can see everything, so I'm kind of clumsy with it. But if you don't have all your pieces in your way, again, it's probably a little easier. Okay. Now we're going to add one more. Another thing, if you worry about mixing your pieces up, take a picture of your placement before you get started sewing, and then you won't have to worry about that. You can always refer back to that picture. Okay, I'm almost finished here. And then we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of other tools that I've used when we start sewing our rows together. And I am, again, just keeping them in order. Makes it easier when I get finished. Okay, see, this isn't so bad. It's going pretty fast. Oh, I gotta press. I'll press this one that way. Okay. Last piece we're adding. And then I'm going to show you how to sew the rows together. Make sure your angle is pointing the right way to square off your row. You good, Nicole?
We have a couple questions.
All right. We don't always get to see questions on the camera that's recording, so I'm glad you looked at that.
So, are you doing the 2/4 inch or are you doing the scant?
The pattern calls for a scant 1/4 inch, so that's what I'm doing. I'm a rebel though, so if you're not into the scant 1/4 inch, I don't see why it would matter, really.
As long as you're just doing
As long as you're consistent throughout the project.
So when you're sewing this, Phyllis had asked, I'm not sure what it was, you would line up on the top of the hex and not the center. So yes, the top, you're matching the top
Yes.
to the top.
The top to the top. And their dog ears are clipped off, so you won't have any points that stick over. It's going to line up perfectly, as well as that edge there. So you won't have any points that stick over on the side you're sewing on.
Also, Miss Paula, will there be more classes like this? Yes.
Yes, we do virtual sew-alongs, free sew-alongs all the time. And they're always something that's a free pattern or a technique that we can teach you that's not going to be something that is conflicting with a designer's pattern. We don't do free patterns that aren't a free pattern.
And how long have you been quilting?
How long have I been quilting? Gosh, my daughter's 25, 27, about 27 years. Right after she was born, my son was in 4-H, and that's when I learned to make a raffle quilt for the 4-H kids. So, flipped it. See how easy it is to put it back together? So that's how long I've been quilting. And I'm self-taught. So I have taken some classes, but I'm pretty self-taught. So there are no quilt police here. Okay, I'm going to have to scoot over a little bit. I can't reach my iron.
We're actually working on the calendar right now for more sew-alongs and
Virtual retreats. We do virtual retreats. If you guys that have never done something like this with us, we do virtual retreats where we have a mystery quilt. And I was just talking to a pattern designer about seeing if we can partner with him to use one of his designs for one of our mystery quilts. So I'm supposed to go check them out, check out his patterns and see which one that we might want to use. Okay, so I have all my rows done for this little section, and I'm ready to start stitching my rows together. Now notice that I'm lining up my hexis. I'm not going to worry about this edge over here or this edge over here. If you can they see that, Krissa? It is totally not going to line up, because when you cut these, you just guessed in the middle, right? It's not accurate measurements. So when we are pairing up our rows, we want to right sides together. If you pressed your seams all correctly, they're going to line up, right? They're going to nest. So there's a couple of things you can do. You can pin. I want to show you a product. We use the Acorn easy piecing system. And it has two products in it. One is a pin, and I'm going to show you in a minute when we're pressing our seams, how well this works to flatten that seam out. It also has a glue. Now this is a temporary glue, but it's something you can use instead of pins. It just takes a little bitty dab, and you just dab where you're nesting your seams together, a little bitty dot, and then put your seam together, and you're going to set it with the iron. So I'm going to match all these up, and then I'm going to set it with the iron. You want to stay in that 1/4 of an inch. It is repositionable. I'm going to set these two. So is it going to hold like really, really tight? No, but it's going to, I think you got to leave it there a few seconds. It is going to hold it good enough to keep it in the place you want it to be without having to use pins. And it would be easier for me to pick it up and look at it, but I'm laying it here so y'all can see. I'm going to make sure that those seams nest. Okay, any more questions, Nicole? So now I'm not going to have to use a pin, and I'm going to go over to my sewing machine, and again use my leader, and I'm going to start sewing this. Again, the ends are not going to line up. Don't worry about that. You're worrying about your hexis is what you need to worry about. I'm very careful not to let my seams flip on me, because that leaves a big nasty bulky spot in the back of your quilt if you're not careful. Okay, once I have that row put together, I'm ready to add my next row. The other product I want to show you by Acorn is the Easy Press Pen. This is a solution that goes in this pen. It kind of looks like a paint pen. The little tip goes down in there and gets it wet. You can just use this pen to rub right on your stitch line. And then you can finger press this out. This works really good, especially when you're piecing blocks. It works great for in the hoop projects, but it gets a really good flat press then. And it just really helps you match your seams up better. And if you pay close attention to this portion of putting your project together, you're going to be happier with it in the end. It just looks nicer when you do those few extra little steps. So we're going to put our next row on. You could, if you wanted to chain 2 rows, and then go back. You wouldn't have to do them a row at a time. That's another time saving. I'm going to wing it and nest my seams as I go without securing them with a pin or glue, just for time saving purposes. Pins are a little harder when you've got an angle sometimes with holding your seam where you want it. So that's what a glue is really nice for that. Just making sure I'm nesting, making sure my seams aren't flipping. one thing that I won't cut corners on is using my leader, because it never fails when I think, oh, I don't need to use my leader. I'm just gonna wing it. It always makes a liar out of me. And I don't like having ugly edges. These pins come with in a little set with just the pin and the solution as well. You don't have to get it with the glue. You can get it just the pin and the solution. And that little set comes with replaceable tips, some tip replacements. So if your tip wears out, you can replace it with a new one. Now this one's going to be way off on the edge. I think I missed the middle when I cut those two pieces. But I'm going to show you it doesn't matter. Now this video is going to stay here in this group. It'll probably also be up on our YouTube channel, so you can feel free to go watch the replay when you start working on this project. It will be here for you. Nicole's watching for comments back there, so if you guys have any questions, shout them out. Do what? Okay. I didn't hear what she said. We can't hear what she said in here. Okay, whatever. Okay, so see how those ends didn't line up? That's going to be fine. Don't worry about that. You're not concerned about those ends because you're fixing to trim that up. We're going to do one more or two more, and we're ready to trim our section and add it to the previous section. We didn't hear what you said, Nicole.
So wait, I'm sorry?
We couldn't hear what you said in there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm checking the comments.
Okay.
So, what pin are you using?
This is the Acorn Precision Piecing Pin. Do you want to tell them while I'm sewing about that?
Yeah, definitely will. Okay. So I hope this is the pin that you're talking about. You put it in a little kit just like this. It comes with a refill bottle, and the glue. And so this is a 3-piece set. Don't we have?
We do have the 2-piece set.
We have a 2-piece set too. So we do have the 2-piece set where it's just the refill bottle, the pin, and then it comes with some tip replacements. So about this pin, it is like a starch pin. It has a solution that you put just straight into the pin. You draw on your seam line and finger press it. And so I like to use it when I'm doing projects in the hoop, like my embroidery hoop, or if I'm being lazy and don't want to go straight to the iron. Can they hear me? Your mic's over there. I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm going to be a little louder. So the pin, you just draw on that seam, and then you finger press it over, and it presses pretty decently well. So I use it in my hooping, in the hoop projects when I do projects in my embroidery hoop. But I use it on everything when I'm piecing and finger press it and then take the iron to it because it gets a really good, flat, crisp press on there. And so when I go to piece, it lays perfectly flat for me. And then the glue right here, we like to use that for like binding to glue it in place before we're stitching it down. So we don't have to use pins or clips. if you're doing a lot of piecing, applique, just something to hold it in place. And then what I was saying is this is a 3-piece kit, and then it also comes into a 2-piece kit where it's just the solution and the pin and then the replacements.
Let me demo that one more time since I need to demo press my seam here. I'm just going to take the little paint pen, and if it starts getting dry on you, you can just push it down just like a paint pen. And I'm going to just rub it right along my stitch line. And then I'm going to turn out my seam and just finger press it.
Miss Tris Fisher is just wanting to make sure that she will be able to rewatch this.
Yes, ma'am, Trish, you will be. It is going to be in the group forever and ever. Okay, so see how my edges aren't perfectly lined up. That's okay. Get my cutting mat here. We are going to trim that now. The pattern says to, do your whole row together, and which is pretty long. It's 64 inches long. I don't know about you, but I don't like handling something that long and trying to trim it. So I thought this size was perfect because I can use my little quick trim ruler now, and I can line up right at that point where these hexis come to a point. We're going to measure out 1/4 inch and trim that off. And then it should line right up with my other piece. So I'm going to go ahead and trim mine. So you see why I said it doesn't matter if you line up on the edge, because you're going to trim that. And now I'm going to see my first square. I'm getting my hexis all wadded up underneath here. So my first square should now line right up with this one. So I'm going to now align my seams.
Shigala, she's saying that she lost sound.
Try going out of the video and coming back in it. I'm not sure if that, of course, if she lost sound, she couldn't hear me. Can everybody else still hear me? The microphone's working, so. I'm going to pin this because it is a little bigger block to handle. So I am pinning my seams. You could also use the glue here. But I do want to make sure that my edges are lining up at this point because I've already trimmed them. So yes, my edges should line up now.
Okay, everybody can hear you and it's still good. And this video just so you know will be
Yeah. Yeah. It's also probably going to be on our YouTube channel. You guys, we're trying to take all of our videos and as we remake them, load them up into our YouTube channel. So you can always check there for our tips and tricks. This is going to be so pretty. I can't wait. Just cut the thread, machine. I can't wait. You're too slow. So this really helps in thick spots too. I guess I better not iron on that cutting mat, right? It really helps in when you have a lot of thick spots. Now it doesn't matter which way you press these seams. You can have them go in both directions. You can press them open, whatever your preference is. Because what you're sewing now on the edges of this is going to be a solid piece of fabric. So you won't have a seam to have to match up. But there you go. Like that's a good chunk of it in I did it in 2 manageable pieces. So next I would set this aside and I would start planning it with that navy in the middle and then just go from there and do another section. So that's how I would do it. Once you get your pieces, your 3 rows made of your little hexis, you're going to take your 4.5-inch strips. And these, you will have to sew these together. It tells you in the directions to sew them end to end. These, I'm just going to show you, are going to go in the middle of your longer rows. So when you have all 3 of these put together, you're going to have this in the middle between the 3. And then on the outer side, you will have your, let's see. Look at the picture. Yes, on the outer side you'll have your wider pieces, and then the top and the bottom just has the little skinny 2.5-inch strip. So it'll end up kind of looking like that. I know the table's not big enough, but it'll be very pretty. No matter what what fabrics you choose. Again, I highly suggest a solid in the background. Now that I started doing mine today, I was like, oh yeah, a solid in the background is going to be so much easier. Plus, you want your hexis to stand out. So you want something that doesn't really, that it contrasts good. Let's see, what else? Any questions?
They don't want to make.
I was telling them that. So see, if you didn't want to make a full quilt, how cute would that be for placemats? How cute would it be to make it a little longer and do a table runner, or even add another hexi in there to make it a little wider table runner, or the bed runners. You could do this as the front of a pillow and make it however big you want to make it. These hexis go together no matter how many you put together, as long as you know you have to put that little side piece to square them up. And now you know how to do that, then you can make this little hexi project into anything you want to make. You can piece your hexis together to be the outside of a bag. You could piece your hexis together to do, just make a simple pot holder or whatever. You don't have to make the full quilt if that's not what you want to do with it. So this little tool that you've gotten now and a jelly roll can turn any jelly roll into some hexi pretties. So whatever you want to make out of it. No other questions? Okay, guys. The one thing I was going to tell you, the reason, and I started telling Nicole, and she didn't even let me finish it. And she said, I know. I want to be able to, in this solid area, do some fun quilting. So it's going to stand out. It's going to be seen. Maybe some feathers would be pretty in this one. So that was my idea of the solid background at first. It would be a really fun quilting project, not just piecing. So hope you guys enjoyed this free sew along, and go make your half hexis and have fun doing it. If you have any questions, comment in this video. We'll keep an eye on it to see if anybody has any questions, but the video will be here. So don't rush. It's not going anywhere. Y'all have a great rest of your day, and we will see you later. Bye. Oh, wait.
Finished quilts when they're done.
Oh, yes. Nicole wants to see finished quilts when you're done. So post pictures in the friends group. We might even have a fun contest. watch for details. I have to come up with it, but we'll have a fun contest and we'll post details in the group to encourage you to finish your quilts. And that maybe I have to finish my quilt too. I have several that are started and not finished, but that's another story. Okay, guys, y'all have a great rest of your day and we will see you later. Bye.